Hello my friends, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. My name is Erin, and today I thought we would do something that I haven't done in a very long time on my channel. We are going to dive onto Reddit No Sleep today. I thought we would just read a few stories together and see if we can find anything that creeps us out, gives us a little chill, you know. Let's just have some fun and let's see if there are any good stories on right now, since I haven't been on in, oh my god, months. I don't think I've been on since the beginning of the year. Yeah, probably. It's been a while. So I thought that would be fun to just head onto No Sleep and see what kind of stories are there and what we can find out and see if anything is fun and spooky and, you know. So I will have each story linked down below if you want to check it out, and also I'll have it on the screen next to me so you can read along if you want. So this first story is called My Friend's Life Seems Perfect on Instagram. I found out it isn't so perfect after all. That sounds intriguing. I feel like that's something, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people can kind of relate to Instagram and seeing people's perfect lives on Instagram. So let's see what it says. My friend Callie has the perfect life. I mean, look at this stuff posted on Instagram a week ago. John made an impromptu campfire in our backyard tonight. We ate s'mores, stargazed, and fell asleep. I am so blessed. Hashtag happily ever after. And underneath, a beautiful photo of Callie, John, and their 2 kids lit by a campfire. The kids were smiling and well-dressed. He was handsome as always, smiling, a shadow of stubble along his jaw. She had a full face of makeup, a cute dress. I mean, really, do other moms have time for that? Because I sure as hell don't have time to put on makeup. I barely even have time to go to the bathroom. Okay, maybe I was a little jealous, but I mean, come on, she was beautiful. Her husband was some hotshot doctor. Their kids were perfectly behaved at playgroup. I was a total disaster compared to them. The next day, there was another update. Even on my bad days, John is my sunshine. Today he made dinner, my favorite. Hashtag eggs Benedict. And he tells me I'm beautiful, even when I'm not wearing makeup. Hashtag love my hubby. Underneath, another perfect photo, although this one was even worse. Trying to look imperfect, down to earth. She was clearly wearing makeup, but natural enough that I couldn't argue her on it. I could make out the caked layers of foundation around her left eye, more than really seemed necessary. I wonder if she got super dark circles under her eyes, or, ooh, a huge pimple. Then I frowned. You're being mean. Of course she has embarrassing imperfections. So do you. So does everyone. But I couldn't help but be jealous. Every day of parenting my 2 kids, I felt like I was spinning out of control, barely keeping it together. Only one diaper blowout or 3-nager tantrum from going insane. This woman, she was actually enjoying motherhood. What the frick? Look at this woman, I complained to my husband one night. She had just posted a new photo, her kids in a little fort John had built them in their finished basement. My husband is so talented. He built this fort for them in 1 day. It's absolutely hashtag perfect and hashtag magical. Look at the little doors, OMG. Nice fort, my husband said through a mouthful of Doritos. Do they sell those on Amazon? No, he built it. That's awesome. I narrowed my eyes at him. How do they have time to do stuff like that? It's ridiculous. We're barely staying alive here. Nannies, he said, shoving more chips in his mouth. What? They got a nanny, obviously. She does all the lousy work, like cleaning poop and doing laundry. They have time to frick around and build forts. Huh. That was a possibility I hadn't considered. I smiled, feeling a little bit better about myself. Yeah, maybe that's it. I stared at the photo. The 2 kids stood inside the wooden fort, which looked expertly constructed. Inside, the little girl and little boy poked their heads out, smiling. The little girl's hair was perfectly pinned back with a bow, and the boy was wearing a fancy button-down shirt. Behind them, the basement was clean. Even their toys had all been put away. John crouched next to them, handsome with his wavy dark hair and brilliant white smile. Perfect. Magical. I felt a pang of longing. Then I turned off my phone, rolled over, and went to sleep. When I woke up, there was already a new post from her. It was a selfie of her and him standing together on a boat. Behind them, the sun rose, painting the sky in beautiful hues of red. The open sea glistened and sparkled. My hubby surprised me with a wonderful trip out in his boat. Feeling so blessed right now. I love him more than hashtag everything. more than life itself. I stared at the photo. Something seemed a little off about it. For one, he was holding the camera. Usually when I saw couple selfies, the woman was holding the camera because the man never really wanted to take a selfie in the first place. And the way she was sitting was weird too, leaned up against him, her arms tucked behind her. A horrible realization hit me. I scrolled up through her last few posts. Hashtag happily ever after, hashtag eggs benedict, hashtag love my hubby, hashtag perfect, hashtag magical, hashtag everything. Taking the first letter of each hashtag, they spelled out something horrible. Help me. I glanced at the post of her on the boat, 6:32 a.m., a little over an hour ago. More than life itself. He was going to kill her. I grabbed my phone and called the police. After hours of searching, they finally found them. Callie tied up on her husband's boat, John armed with a knife. When the police searched the house, they found the two kids locked in the fort in the basement, scared, crying, but completely unharmed. According to Callie, John started beating her months ago. He gave her a black eye, then a few days later took her on his boat, planning to throw her in the water, never to be seen again. She knew he checked her phone, read her texts, her emails, wouldn't allow her to make a call without him in the room. So she sent out a message through hashtags, hoping he wouldn't catch on and hoping that someone wouldn't hear her plea. Help me. Wait, that one is actually really good. Oh, wow. I wasn't quite sure where it was going at first. I figured it was something like, obviously they weren't perfect and this was just, you know, a kind of fake out kind of thing. But no, that one was good. Oh, by the way, just to tell you guys, I'm on the top posts of this week. That's what I'm looking through, just in case you wanted to know. I don't want to read a super long series because I don't think we'll have time to finish the whole series on one video. But maybe we can do that later. Should we do another marriage one? Maybe we'll do another marriage one. This one is called I Was Warned Not to Go Hiking with My Husband. So let's see what this one's about. We'd been married for over 2.5 years, Sean and we never took vacations, not since our honeymoon in Greece after the wedding. Sean was a psychiatrist and loved his job. He was so committed to his work and his patients, and that's what made me fall for him in the first place, his ambition and care for others. Sean was never around much anymore. He started to spend less time at home, and even when he was there, he was always too busy to spend time with me. Another time, Jorge, he would say, sighing from exhaustion and my constant nagging and need for attention. I'm not ashamed to admit I was needy. Seriously, Sean, it's like I'm living with a stranger. Something needs to change. After nights of sitting and sleeping alone with him, I was surprised when he came home one night and said, "Let's go on a vacation." At first I thought he was joking, so I ignored it, passed it off as an attempt to humor me and keep me sweet. But the next day he was so insistent. It was nice that Sean was suddenly taking an interest, but I was also suspicious why. I didn't directly question him. I didn't want to dampen his efforts. He was trying. That's all that really mattered. Hiking, he said to my complete surprise, give us a chance to be, I don't know, together for a few days. I think we need it. Wouldn't you agree? It was ambitious, hiking, I mean. Sean had never shown any interest in the great outdoors, let alone hiking, and he was so anal about his hygiene. I couldn't imagine him lasting 2 minutes in the wilderness without a power shower and his creature comforts. Okay, I said, giving in to his repeated attempts. He finally talked me into it, so I tried to be optimistic. It'll be great, exciting even. I can't wait, Sean said before kissing me for the first time in months. It felt like things were beginning to change. I left the planning and purchasing of camping gear to Sean, mostly because I had no idea what we would actually need, and secondly to see if he would actually follow through with it. My best friend Darcy couldn't believe it when I told her. Why the change of heart, she said. You suggested a vacation so many times, and he's dismissed every single one. And hiking? Rather you than me, dude. Darcy hated Sean. She had never outright told me, but she didn't need to. I saw it in her distaste for his cool attitude, his negligence of our relationship, and the way he dismissed her whenever she was around. I think he's scared of losing me, I said, convincing myself more than her. Never one for skirting around the truth. I could tell by Darcy's slight smile that she didn't agree. I still think he's freaking someone else. I rolled my eyes. I was sick of hearing that accusation. About a year ago, Darcy saw Sean with another guy at a restaurant. They were cozy, content, and immersed in each other. She even managed to take pictures undetected. They proved nothing, and she saw nothing. Darcy knew of the guy Sean was with, friend of a friend, something like that, and she said he was just a young guy who flipped burgers at a food stand, not exactly someone Sean would be networking or associating with. I never told Sean. I thought maybe it was one of his patients. A golden rule you don't break is being social with patients, though, as Sean had told me years ago. But maybe there was a reason for it, or maybe I just refused to believe it. I was at home pre-packing the car the night before we were due to leave for our trip. Perhaps it was the excitement of getting away or my general anxiety of doing something I'd never done before, but I thought it was best to be organized. Sean was at the office. He told me he needed to finalize a few things and make sure his patients were aware he would be absent for a week. I received a phone call from Darcy after I loaded the car. "Don't go anywhere with him," she said, sounding insistent. "What, Darcy, what do you even..." She cut me off. "Jorge, I'm pretty sure that Sean isn't who he says he is." The revelation did nothing for me. No shock value, no concern either. It just sounded like another one of Darcy's attacks on Sean. I've known Sean for 4 years. I think I know him pretty well. What are you even talking about? "My friend Sabrina, she's good friends with Tommy, Burger Boy, you know, the one I saw Sean with." I hummed. I already knew where this was going. "Tommy's dead, Jorge. He was freaking murdered." I scoffed, then I began to laugh. "I'm serious, Jorge. You need to get out of there," Darcy yelled. "You're being ridiculous, Darcy. I know you don't like him, but..." They were in a relationship for a year. Sabrina told me everything, said he was violent with him, and, oh, for frick's sakes, open your eyes, Jorge. I had had enough. "Goodbye, Darcy," I said before I hung up. We set off at 5 a.m. the next morning. I was pretty restless most of the night. I thought about how low it was of Darcy to bring a recently murdered boy into my marital problems, and her personal resentment of Sean. I couldn't imagine what Tommy's friends and families were going through. "I read up on the mountain," I said to Sean as he drove us out of town. Grasmere Mountain was 4 hours away from home, and with how I felt that morning, it didn't seem far enough. "That's good. Anything interesting?" he said, concentrating on the mostly empty road. "There's a lot of trails, has a lot of wooded areas around it. There's streams and little brooks too. It looks beautiful. It was a good suggestion." Sean nodded. "Great." It wasn't great. It was just a standard mountain, something I didn't particularly have an interest in, but I wanted to think about anything else other than my husband being associated with someone who was just murdered. The next thing I said admittedly spooked me out when I read about it. Apparently there's an urban legend about Grasmere. Years ago, if you went up that mountain, then you never came back down. "Well, let's hope that's not true," Sean said with a smile. We were well into the main trail by midday. The sun was hot and it made me sweat profusely. Those extra pounds I'd gained at the turn of my 30s didn't do me any favors. I saw that Sean struggled too. We'd spent most of the journey up barely speaking, only small talk, polite conversation. "Do you want to take a break?" I asked him in between panting. "No, come on, it's not much further." "How do you know?" "I don't," he said with a grin. It was the most animated I'd seen him in a long time. I started to feel a lot more positive that doing this was a good idea when I saw him look like he was enjoying himself. Eventually, we were on level ground and finally took some time out. Part of me regretted coming to Grasmere because my dodgy knee was flaring up from the hike up, but the other part of me enjoyed the rush and achievement of making it up so high. There was still more to explore, but Sean and I decided to lay our roots down and set up camp. "Are you sure we have enough food and water?" I asked, as I unpacked what minimal amount of food there was. It was Sean who packed the essentials in there. He scowled at me. His mood had changed since we came off the trail. "Yes, I know what I'm doing, Jorge. I'm not a freaking idiot." I was just making sure. He appeared to be preoccupied with his thoughts as we set up the area with our tent and such. He was repetitively impatient and short with me too. "Let's go for a walk," I suggested. Sean scoffed. "Haven't we done enough walking?" "Well, we are on a walking holiday." He shook his head and looked disgusted at the suggestion. "I'm fine here. You can do what you want." I'd had enough of his attitude. "Sean, what the frick is wrong with you?" He sat up from the log he was resting on and swung both his arms backwards and forwards like he was about to do a warm-up for a workout. The smirk on his face chilled me. "Nothing. I'm at peace, Jorge." He said this whilst looking down his nose at me like I was lower than him. At peace. What an odd thing to say, I thought. I didn't say anything else to him. I decided to walk away. I wasn't prepared to start an argument with him in the middle of nowhere, high up on a mountain of all places. The last thing we needed was to be at war when we were stuck with each other. The woods felt damp and smelt of fresh rain, which was unusual considering the temperature the sun cast down on the ground and the clear skies above. I wondered if Sean acted dismissive because of what Darcy said to me the night before. If he was seeing that Tommy boy like she claimed, then maybe he was grieving, felt guilty even about it. Maybe he was in love with him, or maybe it just wasn't true. I was confused, but what was clear to me was that going on the trip was going to make or break our marriage. I had a feeling it would be the latter, but I made a commitment when I took my vows, something I took seriously considering how long it took us to have the right to marry. I tried my best, but I had exhausted every option. I was tired of trying. Suddenly, I heard some twigs snap behind me. I ignored it the first time, but then I heard some more snapping closer to me. "Sean?" I called out, but there was no one there. Probably just a squirrel or something, I thought. I pulled out my phone and considered calling Darcy to apologize. I hated arguing with her. However, there was absolutely no signal. Of course, I sighed at my phone. I was surprised that she didn't text me or attempt to call me again after I hung up on her the night before. She was usually persistent when it came to getting her point across. When I walked back to our tent, my phone vibrated. Several text messages and missed calls from various people, a couple of friends, and to my surprise, Darcy's dad, who had left me a voicemail. Before reading the messages, I went straight to his voicemail with my heart in my mouth. For her dad to call, something had to be up. When I hit play, it was fuzzy, barely audible. "Jorge," he was distressed. I could hear it in his voice. "It's Jeff." He broke down sobbing, and it was hard to hear a tough man like him cry. It only made my anxiety grow. "She's been killed. Someone murdered my little girl. Where are you? Please call me." As soon as the voicemail finished, it was like someone had punched me in the stomach. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even cry. All the sounds around me sharpened, making my eyes ring. I went completely numb. It took me a minute before I ran back to meet Sean. "What's the matter?" he asked, his voice one note, his face unfazed. I was out of breath. I could feel the color draining from my face, but he didn't seem concerned. In fact, he sat with a calm poise. "We need to go back," I said, pointing to where we entered, trembling all over. He cocked his head. "Why would I want to do that?" "Darcy's been killed. Someone murdered her." Sean stood up, rubbing his knees as he did so. He cocked his head again. "I know, babe." His tone made me freeze. He looked like a completely different person. No remorse, no urgency. What do you mean you know?" Sean sneered, then showed me his teeth. "Haven't you worked it out yet, Jorge? Or are you really as dumb as you make out? Your little BFF knew, didn't she? She just couldn't leave it alone." I wasn't dumb. I knew exactly what he was alluding to and what he was confessing. I just didn't want to wake up from it. It was all a bad dream. I knew Sean, and I knew that he couldn't have done that. Not to Darcy or Tommy. Not anybody. He helped people for a living. That's what he did. He cared. But I had to wake up and face it. "The boy too?" I asked. He confirmed it with a nod. "Why?" I sighed. Sean put a hand behind his back and retrieved a knife from his belt. His mouth slowly spread into a dirty, menacing grin. "Because I like it." Oh, goodness. I didn't give myself any time to think. I just spun on my heels and ran like hell. I heard his own feet crunch the leaves. He was in pursuit of me, sprinting not too far behind. I dared myself to look back. Sean's face was crimson. The sweat dripped off him and settled into little drops on his t-shirt. I couldn't get over the hunger in his eyes, the desire, like a predator chasing its prey. That's what I was to him. I directed my eyes to the knife in his hand, watched the way it swayed back and forth and reflected the glistening sun. I imagined it piercing my skin. I imagined him slitting my throat with it. I lost my concentration by glaring at the knife, didn't pay attention to where I was running. My sneakers stubbed a hard spot in the ground, and I hit my knee before the rest of me toppled onto the floor. The pain on my knee was excruciating, but I pushed past it and steadied myself back up, ready to continue running. I was too late. He pushed me back down, so I fell on my chin this time. Just as quickly, he turned me over to face him. His eyes widened with satisfaction as he rested his heavy weight on my stomach. I could feel his erect... I'm not gonna say that. "Sean, don't. This isn't you. I love you." My pleading was lost on him. He raised the knife up as I tried to struggle. What a freaking shame. And that was the last thing Sean ever said to me. I didn't see it behind Sean. It must have waited patiently, maybe even witnessed the whole thing. Sean's blood splattered onto my face and my shirt. The sensation of it hitting my face made me close my eyes. It felt like they were closed longer than they actually were. The blackness was comforting for those few seconds. I guess it's true what they say. When you think you're going to die, your whole life does flash before your eyes. And I'd been an idiot. I should have left Sean a long time ago. I should have listened to Darcy. It's only when I opened my eyes that I saw the pickaxe went directly through the side of his skull. His eyes were still open. His body seized uncontrollably for a few seconds before it finally went limp. Then I saw his body raise above me with the strength of the pickaxe. He was tossed to the side like a rag doll. His skull came off the pickaxe like meat on a bone. I slowly turned my head to face it. It was at least 8 foot and looked like every dark, inescapable nightmare I'd ever had. The nightmare looked like a man by stature, but whatever it was not human. Its skin was a boiled pink, scattered with purple intrusions pulsating like thick veins. The face, it was blank, no eyes. The skeletal structure of a nose peeked through, and a mouth scattered with the odd fang. The fangs dripped with saliva. I was prey again. In the time it took for me to register it and take its harrowing presence, I saw the pickaxe raised above me. Before it could strike down directly onto my groin, I got up and ran away. It didn't follow. I didn't know precisely how long I'd been running for. It could have been 5 minutes or half an hour. I wasn't keeping track. It was enough to make my mouth dry, enough to heave. I'd also developed a wheeze, like I'd just smoked several packs of cigarettes. I finally acknowledged the throbbing pain in my knee before I even rubbed it. I felt the fiery heat that radiated from it. I took a gamble that I was far enough from the nightmare that I could attempt to call mountain rescue. No signal, but I chanced 911 regardless. Nothing. Instant disconnection. For frick's sake, I said to myself. Then it occurred to me that instead of running down the mountain, I'd continued going up. I hoped I hadn't gone too far up, that I didn't lose my bearings if I attempted to get back down, and hopefully I'd also find a signal along the way. Limping and trying to use my good leg to move, I took a look around. Coast was clear. I made use of the trees and tried to be as incognito as possible. I noticed a trail and made a plan to follow it. If I could get down as far as possible, maybe it will lead me down the mountain again and I could make a run for it. I was about to put my plan into action when the nightmare emerged from a tree. It stood there before me and it waited patiently. Even though it appeared to be blind, it could see me and sense me. That much I knew. I thought about which direction to go, to run. I gave a sideways glance to my left and saw there was a hill down below. I couldn't see how low down it was from where I stood. For all I knew, it could have been a long drop. I had to act fast. It began to move and lifted the pickaxe up. It was ready to pounce. I had no choice. I had to take the chance. I sprinted to my left as it mimicked my move. I couldn't believe the speed it had. I thought I would make it, and the nightmare got closer and swung the pickaxe. It was inches from my head when I jumped below. I felt the ground on the tip of my fingers, moist, probably what saved my life from the high jump. The impact when I rolled down the hill didn't do my limbs any favors. I pushed myself up and winced from the pain all over. I was lucky I didn't break anything. I got my bearings and wiped my stinging lip. Blood. I felt the split with my tongue, which was like putting salt on it. I couldn't believe my eyes when the thing stood in the path before me. "You've got to be freaking kidding me," I said as I attempted to run in the opposite direction. My legs wouldn't let me run anymore. All I managed was a pathetic limp. I thought I was done, for good this time. "Really? You're still trying to run?" I went cold when I recognized the voice. I turned to see Sean standing there instead of the nightmare, his arms folded, his lips curled, smug, and completely unharmed. It was impossible. "You're dead," I said. "I watched you die." He tutted, shook his finger. "I'm not dead," Sean said, and proceeded to poke his finger into the side of his skull, directly where I watched it get impaled. "I'm in here. You'll always have me in your head, especially now you know who I really am. You're freaking weak, Jorge." Sean approached me. I didn't back away. I couldn't believe he was alive. "You're dead," I repeated, standing my ground. "What will you do now you have no one else to love you? I'm dead. Darcy's dead. Who else do you have?" He was inches away now, the apparition of Sean. It wasn't him. It wasn't the man I loved. I didn't fear him and his cruel words. Even though it embodied him, probably spoke his true feelings, I wasn't fazed by them. Sean, my husband, a murderer, was dead and couldn't hurt anyone else, not even me. Sean's apparition raised the nightmare's pickaxe. It came out of nowhere. It went to swing it. Before it could, I grabbed the wooden handle with all the strength I had left in me. "I have me," I said, looking into the eyes of my dead husband's doppelganger. I thrusted the pickaxe from its hands and hit it in the head. It was Sean who fell to the floor, but on the ground, the nightmare lay still. Blood started to spill from its skull, and it trickled like a stream in the dirt. It took me a while to find the original trail we'd come up on. I limped down it, aching all over, pain stabbing at my nerves. After a while, I found a signal and called 911. When I eventually got to the bottom, the rescue team were right there to meet me. I took one last look at the landscape of Grasmere Mountain. In the night sky, it looked haunting and deathly. They never found Sean's body. Interesting. Okay. Not quite what I thought it was going to be. I didn't quite expect it to go that route, but I did think that Sean was going to be bad, so that was fun. This one says, my friend left the room as one person and returned as another. So let's see what this one's about. I do not mean this metaphorically. My friend Grace didn't have a life-changing epiphany. I mean that the woman currently sitting next to me, now with a glass of water, is not the same woman who left the room empty-handed. Okay. The change is not subtle. While this woman and Grace may look similar, perhaps they might be relatives. They both may have blonde hair and blue eyes that are the same shape, but their noses are completely different. And while Grace used to complain often about her small lips, this woman's are quite large. She sits next to me and I sit completely still so as not to draw her attention, and no one in the room notices the strange woman. It isn't that this is the first time this has happened to me. In fact, quite the opposite. There is not a time in my life that I cannot remember people being replaced and no one around me being able to tell. I was the only one who did not recognize the woman who returned to the classroom after recess. Miss McLean didn't have round eyes, and her hair was much lighter than the new woman's. My best friend of 11 had been confused when I asked her if her mother remarried. I sit next to Grace and watch her scan the room, almost bored with her surroundings. As I type this on my phone, careful to make it seem as though I am texting my overbearing mother, they have never noticed me before, these replacements, and I hope that Grace is no exception to that. I try to ignore it most of the time. I understand there is a large chance I am some new kind of crazy and would rather not spend the rest of my days in a mental asylum. The obvious answer is delusion. Odd, since I have suffered no major trauma and have no genetic disposition, but much more realistic than the alternative. Perhaps I could find it in myself to believe that, if not for a few things. The first being that photographs prove that these replacements were not identical, and secondly being that while no one else could see it, they could still tell that something is wrong. I've scrolled through posts by mothers claiming concern for their child's new behavior, only to post pictures of two different people. The third reason I find myself trusting my eyes is perhaps more gruesome. Miss McLean had murdered her third period class. My best friend and her family had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. I think the others are concerned about the time spent on my phone. I try to shrug the attention off, but I fear her eyes have already locked on me. I look up expecting her to be facing me, but Alice has made the mistake of asking Grace if she's feeling well. Alice was always intuitive. Grace stares at her instead. My relief is tinted with guilt. I've never seen one this up close before. I cannot understand how others haven't noticed yet. Before I thought it was odd they could not tell that this wasn't Grace. Now I am unsure of how they cannot tell that she is not human. Her teeth are slightly too sharp and her skin looks too perfect, like a badly photoshopped makeup commercial. I hope whoever is reading this sees now why I elected to come clean now. Maybe I am not the only one who notices, who sees them. I like to think of myself as safe, allowing myself silence of my affliction as I wasn't a danger to myself or others. But I suppose I had been a danger. I had seen and done nothing. I was a coward. Alice is crying now. I have attempted to tune out my small group of friends as I typed, but I cannot ignore her sobs. She seems to be the most affected out of the group, but she still is unaware of the reason for her tears. I imagine the tears are a subliminal response to the fact that the woman had begun to speak. Her voice is much too soft and floaty to be Grace's, and some part of Alice must have noticed. I don't realize till the girls began to question me as well that I have also begun to cry. I suppose that explains why it's getting harder to type. I need you to understand that I don't know much. In fact, I know barely anything. But perhaps if someone braver had the information I have, that may have been able to save the people I ignored. Perhaps not. Perhaps my story will end up on some website warning people against delusions, or one that provides children with their horror stories. I just don't know. I don't know where these people come from or why they replace the people they do. I don't even know if they're human or perhaps something else. I don't know why I can see them when no one else can. But I do know one thing, that the woman pretending to be Grace locked the door after she returned with her water, and that she has turned her eyes towards me. That one was interesting, but I felt like it would have been better as a longer story. Maybe it's a series or something like that, but I feel like that could be way longer than it is because I feel like you could definitely do more with the these things replacing humans kind of thing. I don't know. I think it sounds very interesting. I would like to know more. Hopefully it becomes a series on Reddit and they continue making more about that topic, because I kind of really want to know more. But yeah, guys, that's going to do it for my 3 Reddit stories reading video. I hope you guys had fun. I did. I love reading Reddit. It's so much fun. I always find the craziest things on No Sleep, and it's just a lot of fun. So I hope you guys had a lot of fun too. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. It lets me know what kind of content you enjoy from me. That way I can keep providing you with that kind of content. Leave me a comment down below if you want to see more of these Reddit story reading videos, because I love doing them. I just don't know if you guys like them. So let me know in the comments down below if you do like these kinds of videos. Feel free to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. We can become friends, talk about spooky stuff, horror, movies, books, makeup, all kinds of things. I do a lot on this channel, so hopefully there's something for everyone. And with that being said, I hope you guys are having a great Monday, and I will see you on Wednesday with another video. Bye!